Hey, what's up? Just checking in for a quick video. I have something that's on my mind for a couple of days, and something made me think of it tonight. So I was listening to a song. I was at a song from the '90s. It's like a up tempo like dance song. You can probably imagine it was probably played at a lot of clubs and like a lot of parties, a lot of proms, stuff like that. That particular song. And like one thing, I don't know if you've ever noticed this before, but some songs, like some things it can be like a pop song, right? It's like a pop song, and all of a sudden you just feel bad listening to it. Like it's a cool song, it's a catchy song, but something about it feels bad because there's sometimes music it has ideas, or like it has nuances that you don't catch it because when you're sober, your mind, you don't actually think a thought at a time. Your mind is always wavering. That's actually what it is to think and exist, is that wavering like that. But at a normal frequency, you're in tune with your environment and you can react to your environment. But if you were to take a substance, it'll vastly change that wavering, and it amounts to a different sense of time. But also, you can actually grasp what someone's real attitudes and inflections are. I'm actually going to start putting some of my video content up at a slower play rate, and you can really hear someone's experience and also their attitudes in their voice, for better and worse, at a different cadence. But a lot of times, like music, like say you got a pop song like that, it's up tempo like that. It sounds like a dance off or like a catwalk kind of vibe, but you actually don't get the real attitudes that are in there and what's implied by some of the assumptions. Because all I think to communicate, you assume different things, but even artistically there's assumptions. But sometimes you can listen to something that's pop and it just make you feel bad, or you get mad. And that's an example how like music, it has deeper things. So one thing that song was making me think of is like this whole thing about like sex appeal, right? Like what is sexiness? What is sex appeal? If you think about it, sex is near about it's the most valuable thing. How much money has not been made about things that have to do with selling the idea or the hint or suggestion of sex, whatnot, this and that. How much money, yet how also worthless is sex if you think about it, just in that it's not to sex is nothing more than being a human. That's all it is a human. So every single human has the same amount of sex appeal, sexiness potentially, just because they're human beings. But in order to make it powerful, in order to make it valuable, you have to short it. So that's a deeper principle that I'm trying to tie together: value, money, sex appeal, and also freedom. Because like I listened to Judge Joe Brown, and he says that if you look at mass incarceration of black males, the black male American Africans in the United States, we became a redundant labor class. When you had like the cotton gin and industrialism, now digitalism, different things, our actual labor, we're not redundant in terms of creativity and output, because a lot of the I think that a lot of the way that the world goes, the world goes the way of America, but America also goes the way of Black America. Black people are very creative and powerful. You can't discount the contribution of Black Americans to the stability of the American dollar that stabilizes the world, the stability of the American continent, but also the contributions in terms of culture and on and on. I can't enunciate how much American Africans have contributed. However, according to Judge Joe Brown, there's an incentive and a necessity to incarcerate black males because it makes it's something about he explains it better, but it's like shorting it. So you always have supply and demand with anything that has to do with value. Money, sex appeal is that's a form of currency, and labor. You have supply and demand, so you actually have to control the supply. If you have nothing but supply, you saturate it like that. So a lot of this existence, it undermines human beings fundamentally in order to create value and demand in that polarity that amounts to profit and power. So you have that in sex appeal. A lot of human beings, there's something you would think that eugenics is a new thing. It's like if you take the United States, one of your contentious it's some things that people argue about, like cats and dogs, is because they don't understand the deeper history of what's at played out. You're arguing at the surface level, but you'll stay arguing like that, just like treating a symptom rather than its cause. But if you look at eugenics, like the idea of birth control, I made another video that potentially birth control is how humans were controlled this many thousands of years, because your value in life, your standing, your so most of us don't have access to the means of production, but we do have family. Family is our last line of defense, but also our strength and our standing in this life is our family, for better or worse. You control family, the creation of family, but also the dynamics of family, like what it means to what family means, how family may exist, how families may be tolerated by a community. Because you can't have a family, you can't even have a relationship if the community doesn't authorize it. There's no, because we're not individuals, we're in this life. So you may have no relationship, for that matter, family, unless the community stands for it. But the community was by and large based around the church in the past. So, and in the past, you couldn't hide relationship activity because there would imminently be a child. But then around the time of the 50s, you have birth control proliferate. That changed some of the dynamics in how people were controlled in families, but around the church, like that. That has changed into the medical establishment now, where your psychiatrists and psychologists, they've took on the sophistication of the play of different forms of lifestyles, and then they put different quasi-scientific rationale reasoning behind their approach, but they still exactly control relationships and human beings in the second place, but relationships in the first place, from just the same way as in the past. But my point is that supply and demand is important, and you create demand by shorting supply. So potentially any human being as viable as any other human being for a relationship or for appeal, whatnot. You get a makeover, you get in shape, whatnot, you're attractive, whatnot. But it's important. But I think that, so what I'm saying is that, so when you get into a conversation of like birth control, stuff like that, even all the way up to abortion, like that, you can't take. There's a person named Margaret Sanger. She played a hand in what you have as Planned Parenthood. Now you have Planned Parenthoods that are there's some strategy in where they would be located, how they conduct their business, and how they advertise and who they target for advertising. And I emphasize the word target. There's an old Planned Parenthood abortion clinic in the neighborhood close to where I live. That neighborhood, I frequented. It's called Highland Village in St. Paul. I've worked there for a long time and been in and out there. But there's one specific building there that has a long history. And anyone familiar with the area, they get you can't actually drive through Highland Park without going by that building, and that building giving you a certain thought in your mind. If you really are an adult and you know the history of the area. But these buildings, these are consequential. That's Margaret Sanger. She has a history there's some nefarious clandestine associations with her name, but she would be overt, calculated, educated, socially engineering eugenics. But human beings are eugenics by nature. I think if you take like some young people, very young people, like even kids, they'll start to other and ostracize their peers and cohorts at a young age, but that never stops in life, all the way from near about probably the toddler level to the seniors, to the senior citizen. We're marginalizing and othering people, but that can play out in social, that can play out in professional metrics, social metrics, medical metrics. And it actually may start arbitrary first. You arbitrarily get labeled marginalized other for whatever subtle reason. Then the trajectory of that, it compounds, and you become more marginalized, more of not viable, because of the ostracism. But the ostracism is what's primary. The different failures, the social failures, the professional failures, the relationship failures, that's secondary to the ostracism, but it's also compounded by the ostracism and redoubles back like that. But it amounts to that this one's viable, that one's not viable. And then as that plays out, they become more demonstrably not viable, but it didn't have to be that in the first place. But what that does is that it creates that dichotomy of who's viable, who's a stud, and who's a dud, like that. But that's the supply and demand, the shorting, and I think that all human beings have done that. It's just an instinct of human beings, because that's actually that's part of what it, because we're a tournament mating species. That's what we've been described as. So part of our manner of courting, but also enjoying courting and then creating families and sustaining families, it has to do with supply and demand, and so, because if everyone had their if everyone was able to enjoy their true potential, their original simple potential, then in a value structure, in a competitive zero-sum value structure, a lot of things would become worthless at that point, because it's actually that worthless. Being a human being is that common. It's that common to be a human being. So some people may get to be a human being, some people may not get to be. Therefore, it's valuable to be a human being. But it's somewhat arbitrary, but also there's an incentive to skew it like that. But that gives it its pop. It's the same thing with money, also in labor. So the mass incarceration of people, this and that. If you think about it, everyone's a damn criminal. If you were to really look at everyone, what they've did in their life, what they know about, everyone could be implicated in some form of this or that in their life. Everyone has gotten away with something at some point. If they didn't cook this book here, if they didn't forget, if they didn't fudge this, if they didn't do that, everyone's a damn criminal in the first place. But there's a very sophisticated metric of targeting and isolating demographics, and also you have some people that would actually get prospected. They'd get discovered for the same crime, but they'd get engaged differently and sentenced differently, and so there's a greater motion, but it amounts to shorting supply and demand of labor to make labor more valuable. And then once people are marshaled into the corrections, then their labor can be accessed at a higher profit, because they're compensated pennies a day, but they're actually given similar output and maybe more effective than they would. So these same people that are incarcerated, if you try to get them to do that same work, like building cups for different like restaurants and stuff like that, in the free society, they wouldn't choose that. And if they did, you'd have to pay them more than you can get away with when they're incarcerated. So it pays all the way around to just incarcerate people like that. As some people say, folks, incarcerate folks. It's better to just incarcerate folks, so that's all the way from money in zero sum, like opportunity, opportunities for professionalism, socializing, relationships, and on like that. So it's exact. And I think that one thing that I was thinking is that a few things really confounded people and really serve the inequity in the society. One is the film The Matrix. Is that film The Matrix, it made this seem like the Matrix is this behemoth, this thing that's so unflinching, undauntable, indefatigable is what the Matrix is presented. But if you think about it, anytime you have anything to do with something electronic, digital, anything, how much is it not messing up constantly in your face, just like that? You go to pay for something digitally, it's a miracle that you actually got to pay with your own money, for lack of a better word, because it's that arbitrary if the damn thing is going to work. So the film The Matrix, it made it seem like you can't get past this thing. But before that film The Matrix, a lot of technology, even the internet, it was kind of like, it had to dial up. It was kind of, in a certain way, it was kind of worthless. It was more trouble than it's worth a lot of the time. It's still actually more trouble than it's worth a lot of the time, but it's more sexy because of what that film did to it, the psyop that film did. I also think that the civil rights movement may have been a similar psyop like that, in that it made us think that it's good to go. It's all on an even playing field now, and there's no more disparity. There's no more what's the word I'm looking for? There's no more segregation. It's true, we don't have that form of segregation. Segregation, it used to be more simple-minded, is that, these people look like this, so they can't drink here. But now you still have a lot of segregation just in terms of outcomes, because if you just watch people walk down the street, we can all access the same things online ostensibly, apply for the same things ostensibly, but you see that people are having very different outcomes professionally, socially, romantically, economically, health, medical, on and on. There's very it's very blatant that there's a skewing of outcome, but how that actually functions, I think that it may be more sophisticated than what we can appreciate on the surface. I don't know how actually you're fed opportunities, how you're courted opportunities, how you're received and engaged, and it's very subtle like that. But you can see the broader motion that it's taking place. But it's not as simple-minded as black, white, male, female like that. It's more so like how you think, how you engage, how you move, how you decide. But it can still be as arbitrary and brutal as times past, but it's more sophisticated like that. So these are just some things that are on my mind that I wanted to keep the content going. Because if you hold your tongue, it's harder to express yourself. So if you don't, I'm trying to keep the videos going to keep it flowing. But if you bite your tongue, there's a brilliant YouTuber that said something happens when you bite your tongue, you get blocked up and you can't express yourself as well. So there's many things telling us to be more shut up here. But that might be what the problem is that when you bite your tongue, you more so dam up your creativity and your self-expression. So I offer this in the name and spirit of truth.